When you think of racing, your mind probably goes to horses, thoroughbred racing, Kentucky, maybe even the Kentucky Derby. But what if I told you that the real action was happening halfway around the world in the deserts of Dubai? The sport is camel racing. Americans are breaking barriers in this century-old sport, and leading the way is Isabella Leslie. She is the first American woman to compete in camel racing, and not just even compete, but is racking up the titles too. Isabella, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to share my story and share more about the sport of camel racing.
When I say you are the first American woman, a first in a sport many of us honestly didn't know even existed, has that sunk in yet? What goes through your mind?
In some ways, yes. In other ways, for me, it's just, it's something I wanted to do, and I accomplished it with more success than I thought I would the first time, but that credit does not go to me. It goes solely to my camel. But definitely, it's something that it's cool to be able to say, yeah, I'm the first, based in the US to go on and win this race. But even more so, I think it's just the experience in itself that's brought me so much joy and friendship and camaraderie from all the way across the world.
Georgia, you're from the South. And those people, growing up in the South, you were around horses.
Yes.
Did it ever enter your mind that this sport even existed or that you would become such a key part in it?
No, I had no idea. I've always loved animals of all sorts. I think probably 4 years ago, I sat on a camel at the Louisville Zoo, and they just did a little circle around the loop, and I thought it was so fun. But never, even looking back at pictures, I'm like, I never knew, this day, this was just not that led to what I did, but who would have thought sitting on a camel then in my mind, oh, one day I'm just going to be racing camels in Dubai, that would have never come to mind. So it's definitely a out of this world experience. And I in the US, we say when you see camel racing at racetracks or something, it's exotic, whereas over there, it's just a normal way of life. So it's been a really cool and crazy ride.
I'm so curious about the differences that you see culturally, because you hit on something that where I've seen it is that sometimes it's almost used in between races in the United States. If you go to, say, a horse racing track, thoroughbred racing track in the United States, it's in between races and it's almost like a novelty. It becomes this is funny. And the comparison that I honestly wasn't aware of is this is celebrating culture, and it's a unique cultural celebration built around royal events in many ways. Is that right?
Definitely. And that's Linda, who's become one of my best friends, who started this ADCRC, which is Arabian Desert Camel Riding School, which is the first riding school in the UAE. And then she started the all women's team. That was her goal, was how do we tie in cultural experiences and heritage and still make it, competitive and expats can get involved. So I personally am someone that loves culture, and I've traveled the world. I love seeing how people do things. So when I can bring animals into culture and going fast, it's a win-win for me.
You sent me this picture and it about took my breath away because it's stunning. When was this taken, and was this after one of your races?
So this was actually taken July of 24. It was about 125 degrees Fahrenheit. I had not been on a camel in 3 months because I had come back to the US, and I had gone over to Dubai for 2 weeks to do just a bit of, visiting friends, but also ride some. And then I was going to France for one of the first international camel racing collaborations with Prince Fahd of Saudi Arabia, French Camel Racing Association. So I needed to get on just a little bit, tune myself up. And then also I had picked up a sponsorship with Mike Rapoli of Rapoli Racing, Body Armor. He used to own them. Smart Water, he now owns.
It's a good group to know, Isabella.
Yes. Yeah.
What a group to get hooked up with. Yeah. Not bad.
We had clothing made with his logo. You can see my camels, what you would call a saddle basically is in his colors. So we had a photographer come out and do a shoot. I was like, they said, how far can you go? I said, I'm not fit enough. 500 meters, our race is 1200. And she's like, I want to make sure I have enough time to get a shot. I said, listen, it's so hot. I'm not fit. I said, just get one picture. That's all I need from doing, the running distance. So before we did that, we did some pictures, and I believe this was taken right after the run. So this is Hamlul. He's one of my favorites. Hamlul.
And who knew Mike Rapoli involved in camel racing, international camel racing? Is this
Yes.
something new? Or did you just reach out for the sponsorship? Are they involved in some way?
No, I actually approached him. I did a whole, what do you call it? Pitch, I guess, per se, and
Yes.
exposure and all of that, because when this first happened, Good Morning America picked it up, several big news agencies. So it was in the eyes of a lot of people, and I wanted to, you know, make moves off of that publicity. So yeah, I know Mike and Danielle, who's his racing manager, and some of his team, Ed. So I put a pitch together because I know Mike likes that. You know, he doesn't want you to just come up and say, "Hey, I want this," but prove why you deserve it. So I did that, and he was very gracious, and he's been very supportive of me and pulled me in front of some people at random races and just thrown me out there and said, "She's a camel jockey. I want to be the best in camel racing." You know, he says he wants to win the camel derby. We don't have a camel derby yet, but maybe one
There's
day.
probably going to be one now.
Yeah, maybe we'll have one day. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Did the body armor at least cool you off in the 125-degree temperatures?
Unfortunately, I did not have any body armor over there, but I had plenty of Noble apparel, and it's definitely, yeah, breathable. It was nice. I did train in it, and I actually had a Noble shirt on under this shirt that I have here, so it was keeping me cool as much as it can in 125 degrees.
You mentioned your love of animals at an early age. And is this you growing up in Georgia around horses?
Yes, so this was on the mainland. I mentioned I lived on an island. This was about an hour away. I got into very competitive American saddlebred, so saddle seat riding. I started competing nationally at age 6. But my dad started every Saturday at 18 months old. We'd have our father-daughter date at the barn. And that horse was Carson. He was my first horse. I still think he's my dad's favorite child if he had to answer that question. But so yeah, that was just a day out at the barn and, you know, giving him some grass after a good training session.
Any similarities you have leaned into between riding a saddlebred and riding a camel?
So it's actually driven me crazy because I was an equitation rider. You had to be very poised. Your legs had to be, you know, not moving. You wanted to use a lot of inner knee work. And when you're trotting on a camel, it's the exact opposite. You want your legs loose and kind of swinging next to your side. So it's been a complete 180 in my brain to get used to, you know, the movement of that. And then when you're doing the run or the gallop on the camel, your legs are tucked under you, but then you're leaning more forward, which isn't, you know, I was set to sit up straight. So, you know, I think balance, obviously coordination, teamwork with an animal plays into it. But in terms of how you sit and how you ride, it's been quite different for me to readjust and
I'm still trying to figure out where your feet are in the saddle. Where are your feet tucked away?
They're just tucked up under behind me. They're not attached to anything. So as the race goes on, they tend to drop a little bit. But when the camel feels that, they're more, you know, they know you're kind of getting tired or off balance. So that's when they can slow down. So everyone has a bit of a different way of doing it. We all ride with our legs tucked under us, but I tend to use my toes kind of to push my feet up, which works for some people. It doesn't for others. It's just kind of figure out what works for you. So you can see in this other picture how I have my toes turned in. I've had 3 ankle surgeries on my left ankle, unrelated to horses or camels. And if it rubs a certain spot on the inside of my right ankle, it gets, or my left, it gets quite sore. So I've had to figure out a way to maneuver my foot so that I'm not getting that rubbing. As I get it, but for, you know, a shorter period as possible.
Always fascinated by people that maybe go into a sport or school or career path focused on one thing and being driven and kind of checking all the boxes of what I need to do. And then when you are taken off course, because life is rights and lefts in lots of different directions, when you're taken off course and you realize you've been placed someplace, Dubai, and suddenly this interesting opportunity that never crossed your mind comes to you and you're asked to be a part of this. What was that decision process for you? And did you recognize it as, my gosh, this is like a major crossroads in my life of doing something crazy and cool and different, and I'm going to do it?
Absolutely. So I actually first went to Dubai. I work in horse racing as well. One of the companies I work for is America's Best Racing as their social media coordinator. So I was over in Dubai and we were filming something with our camera crew of, different things to do while you're in Dubai for the Dubai World Cup. So through mutual friends, I got introduced to Linda, who started this camel riding program. And one of the things we went out to shoot was go ride a camel and do it in a cultural experience. You go to these tourist spots and they put you on a camel for 3 minutes and you get off. Whereas here you go out, you ride for an hour, you come back, have tea and date. So we were shooting that video and she mentioned to me when I was out there, she's like, oh, you should come and join our camel race team at some point. And me just being me, I'm always the type of person that's like, yeah, I'll do it, throw me a bone and I'll chase it. And, so that kind of started the conversation. I still don't think I realized at that point what exactly it was. I thought you use a saddle, it's going to be like riding a horse, you're just up higher. And
How
then,
hard could it be? Is
yeah,
that what you thought?
yeah,
I
I
mean,
went back.
I feel like that's a very American thing to think of. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
I can like Google it,
exactly.
figure it out. I mean, it's not hard, right?
So that was Super Saturday. I went back to England for 2 or 3 weeks and I went back to Dubai for Dubai World Cup and they happened to be having a women's race the day after World Cup. So I extended my flight to stay an extra day to go watched it, thought it was the coolest thing. Still don't think I put 2 and 2 together of what it would take to be able to do that. And then fast forward 2 years later, I didn't go to Dubai the following year, but the year after. So February of 24. I texted Linda and was like, okay, like this is the time to do it. Let's go. I had surgery December 28th of 2023 on my ankle to have stuff removed from previous surgeries. And I told my surgeon, I said, whatever you do, I've got to be able to ride a camel the end of February. Like, I don't care. So he actually shifted me. There was, multiple appointments in front of, there was a wait list basically. And he's like, I'll fit you in. Like, I'll get you in. So he got me in. Long story short, went to Dubai 2 weeks before the race in February. And most people, not to take away from them, they're training 3-4 days a week, maybe 3 days a week, 2-3, I would say. And it's like horses, it's not something you just jump into. You have to build up to it. So I did as much fitness rowing as I could before I went over there, just trying to get my cardio up. But obviously with my ankle, I was still a bit prohibited as to what I could do. So I got to Dubai and Linda and I had made the agreement, like, we're going to try because you have to be licensed. It's not just like anyone can do it. We're going to try to get you licensed and ready to go for the race, but it might not happen. And I was like, I totally understand if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It's a safety thing. Obviously, that's one of the major players in this. So I got there the next morning. I started training twice a day. I trained twice a day for about a week and a half. I've never been so sore in my life. Honestly, I felt sick. I was so sore. I had a massage probably 3 days a week. And anyways, long story short, I got my license just in time. And then I took 2 days off for the race because I was like, my body needs a break. Like, if I'm going to be able to even attempt to do this. And I wasn't even that nervous. I feel like I'm more nervous now when I go to compete. But
you probably had no idea what you were getting into, right?
Yeah,
That's the best part about getting involved in something. It's like, I feel it. I want to do it. Let's go.
And I was like, I've come all this way. I've put all this energy into it. Like, I've got to do it if I've got my license. So I was lucky. They kind of do a draw with the camels. They've changed how they do it a little bit now, but at that time it was more of a draw. So you just random assigned. So I was assigned to a camel named Jabbar. And he was, if you were handicapping the race that day.
If you're randomly assigned, it could be a camel you've never been on or raced on before.
Correct.
So you don't because usually with horse racing, I always hear jockeys in the United States talk about, there's this, if they've trained with a horse, if they've had workouts, there's kind of this intuition of, how much to push, when to give back just a little bit. With this, how do you find that connection?
It's hard, I would say. You don't have the horse racing, you at least have, unless it's the first time starter, you have form to go back and look on, you have replays. But this camel in particular was coming from a different farm, so I'd never seen him, laid eyes on him, but someone had raced with him twice before, so I actually pulled up the replays and watched, and I knew he liked to go to I guess we don't really have an inside and outside because it's parallel, but he'd go to the right. So when I was, got on, I was ready for him to shift over to the right. That's as close to handicapping as I thought. But if you were betting the race, there's no betting. He would have probably been the favorite, I've been told, because, he is one of the better camels. So I got lucky there. But yeah, we did the race and managed to win by, I think it was like 4 lengths, maybe. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, and I was so tired halfway through. I was like, riding the race is even more exhausting than training. I reached down and grabbed my leg at one point to pull it up. I was like, you got to make it. But yeah, it was.
I want to show we have some of the video, which raised 10,000 questions for me. Like, what is the training like? And what is the shape of the track?
Yeah.
Right here, it's an oval, and in many cases in the United States, and how far? And let me pull that up and I'll have you talk us through this.
So this was a race in November of 24. So this was actually the last race that I did.
So are those fans cheering you on, honking their horns and shouting things out at you from the driver's windows and the passenger side windows?
Fans, camel owners, trainers, you name it. I was just in the shot a minute ago. I was on the opposite side of the rail. I'm the only one in a blue shirt, if that helps anyone watching. And this is actually being taken from a big bus. I don't know if people have done like tours in other countries with double bus, like a double decker. This is the first one we're having at the races. Linda came up with the idea with me when we were doing race planning at a random coffee shop, literally, I think it was the night before the race. And people were on top and able to cheer and get kind of a different angle because it does get a bit crazy driving cars, especially.
Is that distracting for you at all to focus on your race? Everybody.
Yeah, fully focused. But you see, like, just in regular camel racing, I don't know how there aren't more accidents than there are because people are just weaving in and out. And these people that were there, a lot of them are, first time at a camel race, or they've only come a few times, and it can be a bit dangerous driving. So we thought the bus would help.
A little bit. And then the track, you guys weren't making any turns.
No, it's straight. So if you longer races with camels, sometimes you'll see where they, they'll have a slight bend, but it's very slight, like more of an oval or more I'd say more rounded. But this race was 1,200 meters, so it was 6 furlongs basically. So it was a straight. And most camel races are, it's straight parallel track, and there's a road on at least one side, sometimes two, like this one, and that's when they follow and watch and honk horns.
And that's part of it. You don't sit in the stands like in the United States and watch. You're on and get your drink, get your bet in. You're cheering and betting and carrying on from the car. Watching, it's like you're a part of the race.
Yeah, they have a stand at the end, but most people don't tend to sit there. I think on,
that doesn't sound fun. I'd rather ride along.
Yeah, for sure.
And is this the team?
Yes, this is the majority of the team. Some races not everyone can make, vice versa. So this is a lot of the team. This was from the race in November as well. And it's unlike any other sport I've been involved in terms of horses. Like, I feel like in show horses, you get the mean girls, you're not friends with everyone. It's such a competition. And this is like, everyone is so friendly and cheers everyone on. Like, even before the race, when we're at what you be the starting gate, we're all, checking on each other, everyone ready. So it's just a breath of fresh air, really. And it's been so much fun to be a part of. But as you can see, this was at the end of the day and everyone's celebrating together. And just, it's a really neat experience.
When will you head back overseas to compete again or even train?
Yeah, so I head back the end of February. Unfortunately, schedules have conflicted with Saudi Cup and a race that was originally scheduled for March 15th. So last year I skipped Saudi Cup to go to the camel race. This year I've got to go to Saudi Cup. So I don't know when my next race will be, but I'll definitely be riding when I'm over there and having some fun with the camels for sure.
I noticed in some of these pictures, if you look a little closer there on the camel to your far right has the 3. That's where the numbers are.
Yes, they basically put a stencil on the neck and do some sort of spray paint type thing, obviously that's safe for the camel. So that's how they assign a camel with a number.
Now, are all these camels, can any camel race and compete in a race? Or are there certain breeds or certain types? Where in the U.S., we can we segregate out which horses compete and which types of races, and the trainers have a say in what races. How does that differ from camel racing?
So there is a particular type, people always are like, the camels only have one hump, not two. And the two hump camels are a different breed. These are dromedaires, so they only have one. And, you have some that are bred for beauty pageants and stuff like that. You have ones that are bred to race, just like you would a horse. You have these different genetics and stuff. So these camels are bred for racing. They tend to move a bit differently, not as, I find they're bouncier than camels that you would ride that are more just bred to, I don't know, do what a camel does, right? So you have that aspect of it. And then in terms of what race they go into, there's age restrictions for camels. The women races, the female racing, the options you have are very limited. So, most of them are either 1.2 or 2 kilometers, with the majority of them being 2 kilometers. So you don't really have that much of a difference in distance to choose from, but there's definitely, a selection process. And then when you get into the more intricate camel racing that's truly done over there they use these little robots, and it's basically like horse racing, but camels, there's obviously, they pick races based upon certain conditions and stuff like that. So it does relate to horses in some ways, and obviously other ways it's different, but there's some correlation there.
I just realized something looking at this picture. You're barefoot.
Yes. So we don't ride with
explain. Yeah, just realized that.
Even just leisurely riding in the desert, we ride barefoot. It's more comfortable, and I feel like it kind of connects you more culturally as well. But I've now started using socks because my feet were so blistered after this race. But it was one of those things where I was like, are socks going to make my feet slide more? You've got to kind of play around and figure out what works for you. But yes, I always ride barefoot. Everyone on the team rides barefoot. So it's just, I don't know why. It's just the way it's done.
There's a beautiful picture. I love this picture here. And that made me curious about the demeanor of camels. Yeah, I think sometimes I think that they're mean, right?
Yeah,
there's this misconception that they're mean, but what has been the demeanor when you're racing and just to be around the camels there? And what's the gift that's been given to you because of being a part of the sport?
Yeah, I'm always asked, do they smell, do they spit, are they mean? And if you really irritate a camel like a llama, they're not going to spit at you unless there's a reason to, really. Mm-hmm. They're very sweet. A lot, they all have different personalities like a horse. Some are cuddly, some like to be more left alone. This is Hamlul. He's a bit of a prankster in some ways. Like if he gets the whip, he'll play around with it in his mouth. He's a bit more of a nervous camel. So, when you're on him, you know to be more alert if you pass something that might disturb him, but he's not gonna, the camels don't rear, they don't do anything like a horse would to try to hurt you. And I think a lot of that comes to they were where they, grew up, and his ancestors and stuff like that, they didn't have predators, so they don't have that instinct in them like to run or something like that if something spooks them. But yeah, they all have personalities. Some of them are, we have one named Ferris, and he's a favorite of everyone. He's not a race camel, but he's just so sweet. He'll put his head in your lap. You can hold his head. I've actually invested with Linda, my boyfriend Gavin, and a local guy over in UAE named Obaid, in a camel that's a robot camp. So he's racing with the robots because he's only 3. So, or I guess he just turned 4. So he's too young for a person to ride, and he's an absolute sweetheart. I almost wish he wasn't so sweet, because if we got to the point where we went to sell him, I feel like it's going to make it harder. But it's, they're all different, just like a horse. But I've definitely created bonds with more, certain ones, and I miss them. I cry every time I leave. And it's just, it's similar, like people say with a horse, like man's best friend or a dog. There's something so comforting about being able to spend time with them. And it's been really special for me. That's a great.
I put together a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you, true or false, because you mentioned there's just some misconceptions. Yeah. I call this hump or hope. Camels store water in their hump.
Huh.
Right. Do they store water there?
Yes.
That's all water.
Yeah, they can. Well, actually, now I'm second guessing myself. I should be better about this, because it has something to do with the fat as well. Like the
fat and water.
Fat storage. So, like if they're out for a bigger hump, means they have more supply. I think Linda might
We're going to say that one's a maybe.
My answer, but
the next one, camels can run faster than a racehorse over short distances.
Hooves. In our race, it was 6 furlongs. I think the fastest, like, that they were clocked was, I want to say 30. No, I'm saying it's either 32 or 38 kilometers. So around like 28 miles an hour. So
that's still, who knew? Who knew? I
they're
came up and
going
go
fast,
that fast.
not as fast as the horse, but it's like riding a racehorse. You know, sometimes, or at least for me, if I'm galloping, I feel like I'm going faster than I really am. So it's kind of that same feeling.
Hump or hoax? Every camel can race. They don't require special training.
So like we were just talking about, you know, the breeding, genetics, how they're built, conformation. There's so much that goes into it. So, I mean, I guess you could try to race a beauty camel or someone's breeding camel, but I don't think you'd win.
Camels spit only when they're angry or under pressure.
Hump.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, you know, kind of like llamas. Like if you get in their face, if you're doing something they don't want you to be doing, they're more likely to spit at you. But I've to this day never seen a camel spit at someone, even if, you know, you're trying to basically put what we would call a halter on them. And some of them are a bit more sensitive to things and they'll grunt and make a noise, but I've never seen one spit. So I think it's a rarity.
Camels are fed a diet of high protein for top performance.
I don't know if you would call oats protein. Is that a protein or not?
Okay. It sounds very lean and mean.
That's we're gonna go with.
I think I read something like oats and honey is like the preferred diet before a big race.
So they feed oats, honey, hay. I know there's supplements and things that go into it. And to be honest, I'm not up to date on the feed. There might be, you know, a higher protein feed that they go for. I know iron's a really big thing in camels, so they're always checking their iron levels. But yeah, no, I don't think it's a high protein diet.
There we go. We all learned something there. I did.
I hope I gave the right answers.
Yeah.
We'll call later. What are you talking?
So much responsibility educating the world, being the spokesperson for camel racing. Oh my gosh, the pressure. Do you feel that sometimes though too? It's like, whoa, you know, it's like to get national coverage.
Yeah.
And you feel like, okay, somehow I have been named the spokesperson of this race. And you don't want to like misspeak or misrepresent anything or like put things in like just the right light so people can respect, like, you know, can respect the camels and respect what you're doing.
100%. February.
Which this is such a cool perspective to see the start. There is no starting gate, right? To see the speed that you're off to, and then to see the camels spread out and the view of the cars following along. Talk us through this.
So I'm the one in the lead at the moment. This is the camel I was speaking of. So it's, you know, obviously they're not going to accelerate like a horse with that speed, but they accelerate very quickly. It's kind of shocking for an animal so big and heavy that to go from just a standstill to getting to this speed. And you do start, it's not a starting gate, but there is that gate type thing that you call a gate that you saw in the front of the video, the beginning of the video. And they flip like a rope attached on each camel, and when the gate flips upwards, it just glides and they're ready to go. So we always lean forward, make sure you don't, you know, touch your head on it or something. But it's, you can see people sticking their heads out of cars, shouting. I was listening to this guy that was next to me. He was telling me when to hit, when to do certain things. So,
is that part of your training team?
He is one of the owners of the camel. So he knows when the camel needs, you know, some extra guidance, when to push him, when to just let him go at his own pace. So he was kind of coaching me along the way. Hopefully I listened to what he wanted.
Because it's a lot to listen to them and to and perform and do what you're doing. You know, just wait. Does Michael Poley know that he could ride alongside the track and shout thanks to you?
I bet he would absolutely love to. Yeah, he's seen the videos, so he knows what goes on. I'm sure he'd love to put a radio on me and keep me motivated throughout the race. But yeah, we haven't made it that far yet. I'm hoping we get him over for World Cup and he can come out and experience it all.
And this is the one you won, right?
Yes. Yes, this was the first race. It's exhilarating, and I still ask myself, I think, before each, I mean, I've only done, I guess it's 3 races now, but I'm like, why am I doing this? And then I do it, and I'm like, 100% I know why. It's just a feeling unlike anything else.
What do you hope people take away from this story? Because it's so cool to see and watch the video and listen to you, but what do you hope they understand about this?
Yeah, I think what's important to me is, that people see, I get asked a lot, are women, not respected over there? Can they not do things like this? And it's a changing environment, changing society, but they're so welcoming, and there's local Emirati women that are participating. So it's not like this is just an expat team. So that's always something I want to highlight. And it's, I also want to be someone that kind of influences people. If you have a dream or if you have an experience, and even if it's, hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away, to go after it, because you only have one life and you're only going to be young for a little while. I don't think I can be doing this when I'm 80 years old. Maybe I will, but just take advantage of every opportunity that comes your way, because you never know where it's going to lead. I've gotten my best friend out of it. I've gained so many new friends, experiences over there. When I go over there, we do all kinds of things that I never thought I would do in my life. And it's just been such an incredible experience, the connections I've made. So I'm looking forward to where it leads. Obviously, there'll be more camel races in my future. I don't know when with the movement of this one. There's a big one in Saudi Arabia in April. I think they haven't announced the date yet. Last year, it was a week before Derby. So unfortunately, I had to
It'd be kind of tough.
my job before my hobby, but we'll see where this leads. And obviously, like I mentioned, we've invested in a racing camel as well. So hoping to maybe one day have a camel syndicate or something like that for people to get involved in. So have a few ideas in the pipeline. So we'll see where it all goes.
I have no idea. You're going to make it all happen. Thank you so much for taking the time, Isabella.
Thank you.